Okay, our next presenter is myself. Yes. We have 4 more presentations to go, so hold on. So my name is Hoon, and yes, there you go. And I'm Professor Lee's PhD student. And my presentation today is part of my dissertation. It's still working on in progress. And yes, the title of this presentation is Style Synthesis based on Strategic Style Decision. So let me define the term design based on John Haskett's definition on design. Design is to design a design to produce a design. I think this definition well represents why the various processes that is required during the design process. Because the definition of design changes depending on the field of its use. For example, when designing dashboards for nuclear plants, the central role of the design is to maximize readability by minimizing the error rates. And when designing hand grips for arthritis patients, the central role of the design is to maximize the grip's human factor or ergonomic qualities. However, these examples are based on utilitarian needs of designs, but there are some cases that aesthetic needs are more important. For example, car design. The central role of the car design is to maximize aesthetic appeals to the customers. So therefore, designers constantly sketch and render new designs to fulfill their customer aesthetic needs. And according to Chutat, one of the researchers, said the car design influenced 70% of the purchase intent on cars. And car design represents implicit qualities through explicit qualities. Implicit qualities meaning such as experiential qualities such as smell, sound, or comfort, or safeness, sportive, or dynamic. And explicit qualities are like physical qualities such as color, shape, and textures. And because of the different approaches of styling strategies, there are different types of brand identities. For example, BMW, their slogan was ultimate driving machine, and therefore they compose their designs with more of dynamic design elements to give more sportive looks. And unlike BMW, Volvo, they constantly use boxy or straight lines to represent their safeness and strength. And sometimes car designs change drastically from previous car generations, and sometimes not. For example, Volvo, they maintain their designs in every generation. But unlike Volvo, Audi, and Hyundai, they drastically change their designs over generations. And some car manufacturers design their cars similar to car designs from other car brands for brand association effects. So as a result, in-house car designers, they have to constantly design new designs based on their previous models or competitors, or create completely new designs. So therefore, designers concentrate on meeting company styling strategies when they design the new cars. So that's how in-house car designers do. They sit and constantly design, sketch. So the companies strategically style products similarly or differently from existing products and competitors' products. So therefore, understanding how similar design appears is a key element to understand companies' design. And the product appearance, it is important to maintain to be recognizable. It needs to be unique while it is recognizable and similar to existing auto products. And researcher presented way of analyzing style strategy based on product appearance similarities. And these are the 3 axes of styling strategy based on product appearance similarity. The first one is a present product portfolio, which is about similarity between the new products and the present product portfolio of the company Examples would be in Audi's case, A3, A4, A6, and succession of the product generation is measuring, is comparing the similarities between the new products and the succession of the previous generations. In the Audi's case, it would be Audi A3 2001st generation, 2003, 2006, and the products of competitors is comparing similarities between the new products and the products of the competitors. And, for example, Audi A4 versus Sonata versus Kia. To give a better example, the present product portfolio is comparing how you look alike to your siblings, and succession of the product generation is comparing how you look alike to your parents. And products of competitors would be how do you look alike with your friends. However, this research, this exercise, it wasn't based on empirical studies on product appearance similarities. So if I represent these three axes of the styling strategies, this is how it will look like. And if the product appearance similarity could be quantified, we can analyze styling trends, brand position, what's going on, and also positioning of the brands. For example, like low-end car positioning and high-end cars, high-end brand positioning. And we can also surveillance stylings. For example, Hyundai in 2010 used to be grouped with Kia and Toyota, and next generation, 2012, it was grouped with Lexus and other more high-end car brands. And every car models go through a design upgrade such as facelift or full model change. And design upgrades are efficient ways to add new values to existing models. So therefore, designers experiment with their design alternatives. And so it is important to empirically calculate product appearance similarities. So my aim was to synthesize product forms based on product appearance similarity. So to do that, I collected data to calculate the similarities of the product appearance. And then I decomposed the shapes from the collected data. And from the collected design elements, I calculated the similarities. And then from the decomposed shapes, I identified the visual significance. And based on these two values, I used number 4 as a weighted value, or number 3. Maybe I should name it differently. And then I applied the similarity value for the three-dimensional axis. And based on that, I synthesized car design. And so, Hoon is one of the researchers. He said the three-dimensional quality of the car design can be expressed through 3 views of 2-dimensional images, front, side, and rear views, or 3-dimensional quality. And then And then, yes. And then, before methodologies. So this is how I did it. So like I said before, I collected data. I decomposed the shape from the data, and then calculated the similarities among the car design elements. And in parallel, I identified the visual significance of the 19 design elements. And I aggregated number based on these 2 calculations to compare a design to design. And based on that value, I positioned the 3-dimensional axis. Then based on that, I synthesized the style. And about the data, the professionally photographed car design images were collected from internet. And then, so a total of 119 car models from 23 automobile manufacturers were used. Around like 14 years of data. And yes, so from the images, I reflected 19 different design elements that is stylistically important to express the car design. And so by analyzing this 19 different design elements, I compared, for example, body silhouette to silhouette or fender to fender windows. I compared and calculated similarity based on theoretical position. And now I calculated the similarities between similarities of 19 different design elements. And in parallel, I also identified the visual significance. So I did an eye tracking experiment on 12 subjects on 19 different design elements. So this is how the result came in. So yeah, eye tracker. So rather it is more fixation duration. But because of each design elements have different sizes. So how we normalized it was by dividing the fixation duration of a specific location by the total picture area covered by the.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Did you do this for all the car models?
Yes. Interestingly, there were no female subjects. They weren't really interested in car design.
Except they're the ones who actually make most of the car buying decisions.
That is very true.
That's true.
That is very true. And this is the result. The working probability of 19 design elements show alpha over 0.8. So despite the different brands. So the looking probabilities on design elements were similar, whether the car design was low end or high end. So what I did was I averaged all these 19 different design elements by just one set of 19 design, the visual significance values of 19 design elements. So based on these two data, I aggregated to a one specific style similarity index, because this data was comparing similarities of design elements to design elements, but now I need to compare one car design to another car design. So this is how I aggregated. Very simple. This is the looking visual significance on a one specific design element divided by the total, the sum of the visual significance of the design elements multiplied by the similarities that was calculated. And this is the three-dimensional positioning. So based on this data, I positioned it in this way. And to synthesize the style, the target similarity value is required. The target similarity in this case is 80%. The target similarity value can change depending on the desired amount to the user, and the similarity measurement among this car to like other car brands. So many alternate design iterations were generated among numerous design element combinations to fulfill the weighted sum of 19 design elements with visual significance results meeting the target similarity value. And this is one of the examples how I did it. Yes. So what it's doing is target similarity was, I think it was 70%. What it's doing is it's iterating.
Do you use generic language?
Not in this. I'm gonna. Yes. So what it's doing is it is generating design based on the target similarity.
Certain percentage. So you can see the percentage there, percentage changing.
So this was the result. That was 55% similar to its previous generations, and 70% similar to their competitors. That was the target, and this was the result. Yes. Expected contribution. times per brand based on the styling strategies. Yes. But for the next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 more sets of data to actually analyze the similarities among products portfolio. And you might have noticed, but during this process, during this synthesizing process, based on similarities, it generates a lot, like lots of iterations. So it takes really long time to go through all this. Because think of it as for example, if you have a source car design of 360 car designs, and I use 19 design elements to represent those designs. Then, so you have to, so the total combination of the possible design combination is what, 360 powered by 19 design elements. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to use implement it with genetic algorithm to yes, for efficient synthesis process. Thank you.
Say maybe your
time?
proposal.
Yes.
He just finished his proposal.
Very nice. I just want to ask one more question about this visual significance that you did.
Yes.
You had these 19 subjects, and then they looked at all these cars, and then you
12 subjects on
12.
19.
Yeah. And then you came up with let's say the average
Yes.
of what they were looking at.
Yes.
I was actually wondering how much variation there was in the way they would be looking at, and whether, you know, it might not be interesting to, rather than just focusing on the average, to look actually at the variation. Like, for example, I mean, I don't know the data, but let's assume that you could identify different clusters, let's say different types of people that look at this in a different way, and so look at style in a different way, as an example.
Oh, so for example, even
Well, kind of like, I mean, there were only male subjects, of course, but, you know, in case there had been female subjects, you know, whether there might be a difference in the way they are looking, for example. But it could even be within, you know, one category. I mean, people have different preferences. And so if there's a very little variation in it, then of course the average makes a lot of sense. But if there's a lot of variation in it, you're actually throwing out a lot of interesting information by just focusing on the average.
it's a very big problem. And actually, there are some differences on looking probabilities per brands. For example, in BMW case, this is really messed up and it's hard to read, but in BMW's case, people look the most on grill, for sure. But in other cases, for example, catalog, people aren't that interested in grill to identify what brand of this car was. So I guess it is different depending on the brand. But when you see the correlations of the differences among these 19 elements per brands showed some correlation, so that was okay to average.
Two things. The first is the glib comment about females making decisions about cars. That wasn't a glib comment. Most of the decisions about car purchases are made by females. And that's really, really well known. So you've got a major validity threat if you don't redo this study with an entirely female population and compare the difference. It's a serious validity threat because in any couple, the female's the clincher, and salesmen know that, and it's pretty well documented. The other issue is why genetic algorithms? Because when you turn one on,
Yes.
they produce results. That's what they do. But you can't say much about the results they produce. So why genetic algorithm for your search space?
So then would you recommend any other methods for?
I'd ask the question, why a genetic algorithm? What are you trying to get at by the search?
So one of the reasons why I implemented this, so here I use it as a target, but in the research that I'm currently working on, I'm using these values as a fitness value. Yes.
I would suggest you look up work in Pareto genetic algorithms.
Sorry.
Pareto genetic algorithms in which
Pareto?
in which the fitness function is determined not by a weighting,
Yes.
but by the non-dominated designs.
Okay.
And there's Bentley's Darwin system, which they've now discontinued, did Pareto optimization, and it's I think a more intellectually rigorous way to go about it. And the second thing is the design hysteresis, where you take the designs that designers have focused on, and you do recombination based upon those designs, giving you kind of a local landscape. And the designs you thus generate are somehow close to the things that designers have looked at. So I think you might want to look at other generation mechanisms.
Okay. That's a good comment.
I was curious what during your study, you showed the different designs. Did you show all the different designs in a specific order, and did you randomize it? I'm wondering, like...
During the eye tracking?
Yeah.
Yes, I randomized it.
Yeah.
Because it was really a long experiment. I divided so I created 119 different stimuli because I had 119 different car domains. Right? So I created a Latin square. So like for example, I divided the total number of the stimuli by 3. So A, B, C, and then for each different subjects, there were required. So they tested in different orders.
Yeah, I mean, just basically my question was, so if you were randomizing, did you see that over time that participants started just focusing on the same thing more often, and then that skews data? Like at first, I might look at the whole car, and then the next one, I start to see the only change was that the license plate changed or the taillight changed, so then I started focusing on those more over time.
That was one of the reasons why I use the Latin square. Because, for example, let's say I have a set A, 40 cars, set B, 40 cars, and set C, 33 cars. So and I divided the subjects into 3 groups. So first group were tested with a stimuli combination of A, B, C. Second group, B, A, C, and third group as a C, A, B. So that way you could eliminate your concern.
And then basically also we asked them to try to figure out the brand. So they already got the question and they try to figure the brands.
And I guess the third too, but as Andre was mentioning, for the women comment buying cars, that's the studies that we can find are based in like America, Europe. So Korea is a different country. Before you just go on this path of like we must have women, then I would also encourage you to just look up your own country's data. That it could be male dominated, and
That's a very good question.
That's very good, yeah.
and, my other last thing would be: do you think there's applications for this in like patents and trademark design?
Yes, that was one of the reasons I mentioned about design surveillance, because there were a lot of
So you can like
stuff
get
going
some
on.
government funding for
hopefully.
Samsung copies LG.
Yeah.
So that way, it wouldn't solve a lot of problems that lawyers would make.
And then
Yeah,
actually the result is interesting because now the competitors, cellularity is bigger than generation, right? This is interesting. I mean, first of all, because everybody believes that generation similarity is bigger, right? But now his result is if competitors and the similarity is bigger, it's quite interesting, right? Maybe they follow fashions instead of keeping their generations. We will figure out more.